lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Amity Gilmour. Last year I didn't even think that I was going to wake up and see 2026. There is so much to unpack here, but let's just say that this year is going to be an intense year in terms of music, and I am so grateful that I'm actually able to do this because my health last year was not able to do music at all, and I wondered whether or not I was even going to be able to continue with music even if I was going to make it to 2026. So I haven't actually stepped back and told you guys everything that's happened over the last couple of years because I was processing it in real time, but I thought I would give you guys a rundown of everything that happened. The whole story starts about 3 years ago. I had just moved to Sydney. I'd been living here for about 5 or 6 months. I had an appointment with my dietitian, but before I had an appointment with her, I went into the city to go hang out with a friend because as was what I did when I had an appointment in the city. Remember that day too, I had to refresh my Working for Children's check because if you don't know, I do a lot of youth and children ministry. So I needed to update that, and I remember sitting at Services New South Wales to get that sorted, and the wall looked like it was kind of like doing this mirage kind of thing. It just looked really weird, and I was like, hang on a second, that's weird. I had lunch with my friend, and then if you guys live in Sydney, you'll know what I'm talking about. Martin Place station, the excavator going down. It is the steepest thing, and it is actually quite trippy. But I remember feeling even more unsafe on that excavator because I felt like the walls were moving. I was having visual disturbances of, I don't know, everything was just like visually just not right. No, I wasn't seeing things, I wasn't hallucinating. It was more just like my vision was shaky and wobbly, and the walls seemed to like move like an optical illusion. Obviously all this stuff freaked me out, and so I get to my appointment and I start throwing up. I start feeling like I'm gonna faint, and my dietitian is like, we're not gonna do an appointment today, and she marches me down to the hospital across the road. I go into emergency, I stay overnight. They checked my eyes and vision. They couldn't find anything wrong, but they were like, maybe you're just really dehydrated, so we'll just keep you on overnight with fluids. So I'm great, wonderful. So I stayed overnight with fluids. I remember I was also really disorientated because I went to sleep and then I woke up at 3 a.m. or something. I remember calling my housemate at the time being like, I don't have a phone charger, can you bring it? Not knowing it was 3 a.m. And she's like, do you know what time it is? I'm like, what time is it? Isn't it the morning? She's like, it's 3 a.m. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Anyway, the next morning she comes, she picks me up. Then we just carry on and we don't have any other issues until, so for reference, this happened in September of 2023. And then we come to July 2024. I'd just gotten back from a surf trip with my friend. I had gotten an iron infusion and I was fine the day after the iron infusion and the day off, but then I started feeling a little weird. Things were just not right, and I started declining pretty badly and feeling weak and dizzy. So I went and got a blood test just to check for like some complications that can come along with an iron infusion. Those were negative, and then I went to church. I remember that night very clearly because I remember I was like, I should not be going to church tonight. I feel awful. I remember feeling so bad. I went and got a Hydrolite to bring with me to church, the icy poles, because I was like, I'm not gonna make it through. I got picked up, went to church, and then I'm standing up singing, and then all of a sudden I just like feel like a thump in my chest, and then I just start to feel really dizzy, and I'm like, something's not right. So I walk out into the church foyer, and then my friend sees and comes out and is like, are you okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm just doesn't feel right. And then I almost faint and get down to the floor. My friend goes and gets 2 people at church who are nurses. One of them feels that my pulse is like AFib. The other comes a bit later and it's irregular. So they're like, we're gonna have to call ambulance, and I do not want to cause the scene. So I'm like, no, I'm just gonna get up and go to the hospital. So I get up and then I have to get back down on the floor because I'm gonna faint. And then I'm like, okay, fine, call them. I apparently lost consciousness for about like a few seconds. I remember waking up shaking. I was not convulsing, but just shaking. I remember also that I lost feeling like I went numb in my right hand and my right foot. And I remember thinking at that time, I was like, surely this isn't a stroke, but this feels like a stroke. And that was like in the back of my mind. I get to hospital and I am told by a doctor that it's probably dehydration. You just need to be more hydrated. I'm never hydrated and this never happens. But anyway, so I get discharged that night. I stay with a friend because I'm like, I don't feel like staying at home alone, because my housemate was like, I don't know where she was at the time, but she was not there. She was somewhere else. So she was like on holidays or something. I went and stayed with her. Next morning, I wake up. I cannot get out of bed without feeling the same things are gonna come on. I start getting these muscle twitches all over my body, which then makes me think back to about 2 years before, when I used to get bradycardia events that for some reason came along with muscle twitches. I didn't quite understand why the muscle twitches were happening at the same time as bradycardia, but that was just something that I correlated. Every single time that happened, my heart rate was 40 or 41 or 42. So I'm like, maybe this is ongoing from that. I get an ECG, it shows up 1st degree AV block. I've had ECGs in the past and I've had nothing show up, but this is the first time something's shown up. I'm told, yeah, it's like an arrhythmia. Maybe that's what's causing it. If it happens again, you need to go back to hospital, you need to see a cardiologist. I see my cardiologist, I explain everything, and he's like, interesting. And then he looks at me. He's like, are you cross-eyed right now? And I'm like, no. And he's like, there's something with your eyes. Have I ever noticed that about your eyes? There's something with your eyes. So he then goes and looks at my eyes. And then he's like, I think you need to get your eyes checked. And then I was like, no, I don't need to get my eyes checked. What are you talking about? I do not need that. My eyes are fine. I can see perfectly. Mind you, I'd forgotten about that visual disturbance before. And I was just like, oh, I don't need to get my eyes checked. It's fine. I couldn't see what he was seeing. So what he was seeing was very minor and he could just pick up on it like that. Anyway, I get my eyes checked. And the first time I get it checked, it's normal. When I see my GP, a couple weeks later, my pupils have now gone 2 completely different sizes. This one is small, this one is large, and this eyelid has a droop. Now this thing is coming and going. My GP is like, you should probably get your eyes checked again, assuming that last time you got it checked, those things were not present. So I went to get my eyes checked at the same place, and the same person checked it, and he's like, it looks like you've got Horner syndrome in the report. So I get diagnosed with Horner syndrome. We don't know what's causing it. We don't know why it's there, why it comes and goes, particularly at this point while I'm symptomatic. The Horner syndrome is now where people are starting to freak out. They're like, something horribly wrong is going on. This is not normal. I should say though, this happened after I had the 2nd episode, which I haven't explained yet. So the 2nd episode, it was probably 3 months after, I guess, the one at church. I was leading on a camp. My speech though this time, it became difficult to speak. It was like, I can't explain it, but it was like an effort just to get my words straight and to actually get the words out there. There was something blocking me from speaking. My right hand again went numb. Right foot went numb. I remember they were like, we're gonna send you to the hospital. I go there, I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. They see it all. She's like, you need to be here. She puts me in a wheelchair, rushes me out to resus and is like yelling category 2 to resus. And I'm like, this is weird. I really needed to pee the whole time too. Like the whole time it was just like, but I couldn't get into the toilet, so it locked. So I was like, I'll do triage first, and then when I'm put out back in the waiting room, I'll go to the bathroom. But that didn't happen, obviously. And then I got hooked up to all these monitors, and so like I couldn't go to the bathroom by leaving the bed, if you get what I mean. So that was really awkward. I was just like, what is going on? I remember these people rushing around me and they're just running and there's panic, and I'm just like, I need to go to the bathroom. And they're just like, don't you just love it? We need to go to the bathroom at the most inconvenient time, but I actually need to go. And she's just putting ECG nodes on me and laying me down. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on, but everyone's panicking. After all of that, I get a CT, however, without contrast. CT looks fine. They say could have just been a TIA or it could have been anxiety, either one, of course, because I'm a woman. So maybe just like, we'll let you go and come back later. So TIA, for reference, is a mini stroke. It's a stroke that doesn't leave any damage. So I'm like, what a wide range, like anxiety or mini stroke, what? I just felt so confused. I get back home, obviously we get the eye test, shows Horner syndrome. And then the end of 2024, I do start to get a few more frequent episodes. Not overly frequent, but frequent enough that it's like, this is not just a once off. This is here to stay. The next year in January, after church, we're out and I start to feel like really unwell. So we end up leaving where we're having dinner after church. And I remember I was in the car and I'm like, I don't need to go to hospital, just take me home. I'll tell you if at any point during that time when we're driving, if I need to go to hospital. But then I lost function of my right hand and right foot. And then after that, I was like, I need to go. So we went to hospital and I got ACT. This CT showed cerebral hypoperfusion to 2 parts of my brain. So that means that my arteries or blood vessels, for some reason, were not pumping enough blood to my brain, and my brain in those 2 particular areas were being starved of oxygenated blood. So scary stuff. I was like, what the heck? So I was in hospital overnight and then I was discharged, just like whatever happened has settled. They were like, it's probably a TIA, no driving for 2 weeks. I was like, well, I don't have a class or whatever. After January, these events just get even more frequent. Some of them are getting even more intense, even more scarier. And the whole year of 2025, I'm just having event after event. They're becoming more prominent. They're progressively getting worse. I am losing function of all sorts of things. There seems to be a lack of perfusion to multiple organs and parts of my body. I am getting all sorts of abnormal ECG findings. I'm having to go into hospital overnight to be hooked up to monitors to make sure that it doesn't escalate into a stroke or a heart attack because they have no idea what's going on. I have an ECG finding that may or may not have been suggesting that my heart was not being perfused properly. My intestinal motility is getting worse. I'm getting more frequent pseudo obstructions. Just like everything is not right. I was asking my doctors, like, am I gonna die? I just would come straight out and ask that, and every single time I was met with, we don't know, which I'm like, that's not very reassuring, but they literally didn't know, so they couldn't even reassure me that that wasn't happening. And so I'm just like freaking out, I'm like, what's going on? And I'm just like depressed. My depression takes a massive hit. It gets to a point where I am struggling with thoughts. There was one day in particular where I called my mom and I admitted to her I was struggling with these thoughts. After the phone call, I was just so tired, I fell asleep and my phone was on silent, and my mom tried to call me later on and she couldn't get in contact. And so she called Lifeline and they couldn't get in contact. So I ended up with the police at my door, which was a huge shock. And then they came in, they're like, are you okay? They set me up with a whole bunch of mental health services, outpatient, because they're like, well, no wonder you're depressed. There's a lot going on. Plus on top of that, my mom had cancer last year as well. Just the icing on the cake of all these things. Thankfully, my mom's cancer wasn't like severe and she's cancer free now, but it's still a stress. All this is happening. I released Cry in May last year, and then after that, I decide that I'm not going to be releasing music for the rest of the year. My producer and I talk about it. We're like, we will do some behind the scenes stuff, try and get some songs ready. So we have like a whole list of songs in advance so we can release those songs next year when you're hopefully feeling better and not feeling so bad. And I'm like, great. I also got told by one of my doctors, basically alluded to the fact that what I was dealing with was life-threatening. Not terminal, but more life-threatening than just something that could have potential life-threatening complications. Mentally, I was just broken. Now, the end of last year, however, we start to get answers. The puzzle pieces start coming together. All of the tests that I have had, we've gotten enough evidence. We're starting to piece together the puzzle. And then one of my doctors suspects that I'm having a widespread systemic vasospastic disorder affecting multiple systems. We're talking the brain, the heart, all sorts of things. And so he sends that information to my cardio, who then sees that and decides to put me on calcium channel blockers along with ivabradine together. He was like, look, maybe you also just pray, because like, you know, I was like, okay. So I get sent on my way with the amlodipine and the ivabradine, and I have really good news. That combination together, I've been on ivabradine before and it did nothing on its own, but being on ivabradine and amlodipine together has been incredible. I have only had one cerebral vasospastic events since then. So it's a week later since I took that video. I did not post it straight away. I did edit it, but decided not to post it because I realized that the second half of that video just didn't make any sense. I was trying to explain medically what was going on while also not fully understanding it myself, but kind of knowing it. I'd just been given this information. It was all very new to me. Also, an update. I ended that part of the video saying that I had only had one vasospastic episode since the start of this year. Unfortunately, that is no longer true. I had one yesterday, which is a pain, but at the same time, I'm not worried or stressed. I in no way think that my medication is no longer helping. I think it is helping. It's just a matter of the fact that this treatment and medication is not curing my condition. It doesn't cure it, it manages it. So I'm still going to have vasospastic episodes at times, and sometimes they are going to be quite severe. Thankfully, yesterday's was not severe. I was able to take my vasodilator spray and lay down and it passed. I was very weak afterwards. I still am quite weak, but it did not escalate to what it has escalated to in the past. And also the first episode I had this year while on treatment was actually pretty significant. It's not curing my condition, but it's managing it. And unfortunately, I'm still going to have episodes. Some of them may even be quite full on, so I need to keep an eye on it and just be careful. But at the same time, it's so much better having 2 episodes in the span of 3 months rather than 2 episodes in 1 week, every single week. So let me explain what is going on. Now that I have more of an understanding of what is actually going on, more so how, not that I didn't have an understanding before, I just have a deeper understanding now, and I'm able to explain it in a way that makes sense and isn't just mumbo jumbo. As of last week, I now have answers. Now, I just want to say that what I'm going through does not have a name. It's not a recognized condition. It's more so that it's just a whole bunch of things happening at once. So it's not something that I can just put a name on, oh, it's such and such syndrome or such and such disorder or whatever, because it's not that simple. And a lot of things in medicine, unfortunately, aren't that simple, especially when they are more rarer. So in my case, what's happening is a bunch of things that isn't very often seen. Not saying it isn't seen at all, but it is extremely rare. And it does have to do with my EDS. So it is a rare complication of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Unknown which type. I am getting genetic testing, and that my doctor has gone on to try and fast track that. Because of my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, my blood vessels and vascular system is very weak and has a lot of stretchiness. I just want to put this out there and say, this does not mean that I have the vascular type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It means that I could have the vascular type, but I don't know at this stage. So I'm not going to go ahead and say, oh yeah, I've got the vascular type or I've got this, because I just don't know. I am getting genetic testing tested, but it could also mean that I have other types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that also have different issues with the vascular system. Classical also has vascular type issues, and there are so many different types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well that people don't talk about very often because it's way less common than hypermobile, vascular, or classical. We are getting a genetic panel testing just to and I think we're doing all connective tissue disorders, not just connective tissue disorders within Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because there's also a chance that it could be another type of connective tissue disorder. Remember, in Australia, how our genetic system works in the public system is you are diagnosed via criteria pretty much with hypermobile type Ehlers-Danlos syndrome until proven otherwise. To get genetic testing for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is extremely difficult. To even be on the wait list, you have to have life-threatening complications first before you're even considered. I am on the wait list, but it took life-threatening complications for me to get onto the wait list. Because of my vascular system being very stretchy, weak, and having a lot of elasticity, I have something called poor vasomotor tone. This, unfortunately, is also causing something that is quite rare within Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I will say poor vasomotor tone is not rare in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but in my case, my poor vasomotor tone is causing, which by the way, vasomotor tone means there's just no tone. It's just how my neurologist put it is my blood vessels are bleh. That's literally what she said. So they're just weak and stretchy and don't have much form. Because of that, in my case, I am having an issue called relative hypovolemia. What is this? No, it is not hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock is an acute issue that comes on usually due to sepsis or anaphylaxis or some crazy event, but mine is not absolute. Relative meaning that it's more so caused by, in my case, the poor vasomotor tone. So because of the poor vasomotor tone, I am then having hypervolemia, which means basically that my vascular system, my arteries and my blood vessels and my veins relax too much because they don't have the tone and are struggling to pump the blood to where it needs to go. But then on top of this, because my relative hypovolemia and poor vasomotor tone is just more bad than what is usually considered, it is also causing another thing that is really not common with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is vasospasms. The system is so weak, it's struggling to pump. So then neurologically, the systems fire and set off a panic mode where my blood vessels then go from being extremely weak to constricting inappropriately and then cut off or cause a delay of blood flow to my major organs. This is causing what's called poor perfusion to multiple organs between my brain, we're talking my heart. Now, what does poor perfusion mean? Poor perfusion means that for instance, my brain. It means that there is not enough blood flow getting to the brain, so the brain is being starved of oxygenated blood. This I have to be very careful with because this, if prolonged long enough, can cause tissue death and can cause ischemia, which, if you don't know what ischemia in the brain is, a stroke, or it can be like a mini stroke, which is why it's been like showing up stroke-like symptoms. We don't believe it's been like causing a stroke or mini stroke yet, but it has been more a delay of blood flow rather than a full cutoff. But I am at risk, so I have to be very careful. It's also causing this issue to my heart, which is most likely probably why the T-wave inversion shows up at random times. Because if it shows up at random times, it can, like a T-wave inversion that shows up when you're symptomatic, can mean that you are having a lack of blood flow to the heart. So there's that puzzle piece put together along with the cerebral hyperperfusion that was picked up on scans. Basically, to put it straight, because my vascular system is so weak, it is then causing misfiring of my nervous system, which is then causing my vascular system to constrict, which is then causing a delay of blood flow to my vital organs, which is then causing underperfusion, meaning it's being starved of the oxygenated blood that it needs. This is why my oxygen levels have been tanking during episodes in hospital while I'm still able to breathe, which was something that just didn't make sense. I can breathe. Why is it? That's weird. It is also why they were able to see cerebral hypoperfusion on scans. It's why I have been getting a T-wave inversion on my ECG findings. It's also maybe, but I don't know, I gotta talk to my doctor about this, but it could potentially be leading to worse pseudo obstructions in my gut due to underperfusion. Again, I don't know that for sure. That has been discussed by my doctors before, by my surgeon, as a possibility, but we don't have confirmation on that at this point. With all this being said, this is a very complicated condition, or rather a complicated thing, because it's not like one condition. It is a bunch of different conditions that are happening all at once due to each other, and it is a complicated thing that just doesn't come under one neat diagnosis or condition. But that being said, I am so thankful we now know what is going on, that I am being treated. I am so thankful that my life this year has been so different to my life last year. I have been able to do so much more. But that being said, does this mean that I am out of the red zone? Not exactly, but less likely to be in the red zone. So I still am at risk of quite bad things, if you get what I'm saying, but so much less at risk as I was before because I am responding to treatment. I just have to be extremely careful. I don't personally know what the outlook is, medically speaking, but at the same time, I get the gist that they don't know either because this is just multiple things happening at once. And while one of those things may happen in other Ehlers-Danlos syndrome patients, all three together is just very, well, not even three, there's just multiple things happening because I haven't even explained everything, but majority of the main things that you need to know, other stuff is just minor and doesn't matter, but the main things you need to know that are causing the main issues. One of them may be present in an Ehlers-Danlos syndrome patient, but all three of them together does make things a lot more complicated. I get the gist that they've never experienced it in an EDS patient before. That doesn't mean there are other EDS patients or doctors around the world who have seen it in other EDS patients. But my doctors, who can I just say are the top for EDS patients in my country of Australia, have not seen this before, which is why it has taken 2 years to get answers. More than 2 years now, because I realized it's been almost 3 years because this has been going on for longer than I thought. Perhaps even longer than 3 years, but because it was very minor at the start and then seemingly it seemed to progress and get worse until I was able to find management for it. Now, with all this being said, what I have been told last year that does make sense is having cerebral vasospasms or cerebral hypoperfusion, which is something that I am struggling with, does increase my risks of danger. Let's just put it that way. So I do have to be careful, and I am fully aware that, I don't know, it's not a fatal disease. I'm just gonna say it's not terminal. It's not, okay, it's potentially life-threatening, or no, it's potentially fatal, but not fatal. So it is life-threatening at times, but it is not itself fatal from my understanding. Again, this is my understanding, but does it have the potential to turn fatal? A very rare potential to turn fatal? Yes, it does. Does that mean that I am most likely going to die young? No, that does not mean that. It means it's a possibility, more so of a possibility than someone who isn't going through this or something else that is actually fatal. But that being said, it's going to be okay. I'm not too worried. I think last year, because it wasn't managed, it was more likely to be fatal, whereas now it's less likely because it's being managed. But I am so grateful that I am now at a place where I'm at now, where I do not feel like I'm going to drop dead this year. So that's great. I love that, because last year I went to bed sometimes with these episodes. And if you're asking like, why didn't you go to hospital? If you were in my position, let me just tell you, you go to hospital for like the first part all the time, and then because you're being told to, and then you just wait, and then you just get discharged the next morning. And yes, they'll come back when it happens because we need to manage you overnight. But then you start getting nurses in the hospital system who have never dealt with you before, but they've just seen you around. So they just assume, they don't know what your situation is. They just know they've seen you in emergency. So then they start to assume that you're just dramatic and say things that are just completely rude. This happened to me. Unfortunately, I had a nurse, we won't get into it, but yes, I did not go to hospital after a while for a long time because of this said nurse. So even though the treatment plan was to go to hospital, but I think if anyone is watching this and they're a nurse or a medical professional, if you see someone in emergency all the time and you don't know their situation, do not assume that they're dramatic. I was told to be there on multiple occasions, and then I decided not to go. And then ended up, I literally, this is really sad, but I was so scared to go to hospital for being judged because I'm a super personal person that I was willing to die at home. I kid you not. I wrote a note. There were times where I was in hospital and there was times where I was at home and I knew I needed to go to hospital just to monitor, regardless of whether it was going to be the end or not. and I thought, no, I can't. And I didn't know if I was gonna wake up the next morning. So I had this note that I wrote and was ready. I kept it in my bedside table drawer, and whenever I had a night like that, I would pop it on top of my bedside table drawer. And the note basically went somewhere along the lines of, this is all the symptoms I'm having. No, I didn't go to hospital because they can't help me and this happened, basically. So unfortunately, your broken system has caused this. I put that on my bedside table. And then thankfully I woke up the next morning and just put it back under for the next time, which sounds like insane that I had to do that. But my fear was like, also, what if I'm found in my house and they have no idea how it happened? Then my family doesn't have closure. So I just listed all the symptoms, I guess, just to help with that. And I like laugh at it now, but like, it was so hard and it was such a difficult situation, insane. But that is basically what has been going on. I am well managed at the time of shooting this video. Yes, I did have another episode yesterday. No, it did not escalate into something that was worrying. It could have, but I treated it really quickly. Thankfully, I had my spray in my bag and we're doing good. I think the main thing to take away from this is you never know what someone is going through behind the scenes. And it's been tough. It really has been. But I thought I would post this video to let you guys know what has been going on, why I've been MIA on long form content particularly. I know I have been posting a lot of short form content because it's so much easier. And I've been really enjoying that as well. I think long form content, I've kind of lost a bit of enjoyment for a bit because I've been doing it for so long. But I will be posting long form content every now and then if I've got something to share or something to say, but I won't have a schedule. I'm just going to post when I feel like posting. But my short form content is where you can get all the updates, particularly on my music, because I'm not really going to be like updating you guys on every single bit of my health journey as it's happening like I have done in the past. Last year I took a step back from that and I found that to be extremely rewarding, to just take that time that was so hard for me to be able to process in my own time, not having to bring a camera around to major appointments and then tell you guys. And the fact that I felt like I had to do that is crazy, because I started YouTube because I wanted to share my music, and then the story through some things, my channel ended up evolving into chronic illness, a chronic illness related channel, and now I'm trying to break away from that, and I think I have finally done it. But that being said, I'm not going to not talk about my illness. That's not what I'm doing, but I'm not going to center my whole identity around my illness. But I'm definitely going to talk about it because I think that my story has been able to encourage other people who have an illness or who feel like they can't continue with the things they love. And that has been my main goal for a couple of years now, is to encourage people that they can continue with their dreams. Yes, it's going to look extremely different, and maybe it's just going to be a hobby. It's not the end of the world when you get to a diagnosis, but I know you can feel it so much. But I just want to provide encouragement for those who are getting diagnosed early on, that they can still do the things they love. It's not game over. Is it going to look different? Yes. Are you going to be able to do things you love full time? Probably not. Is it going to be able to be a career? Maybe not. But can you still enjoy it in small bits and pieces to whatever you can handle? Yeah, I definitely think so. I have blathered on enough. I hope this video has brought a little bit of clarity to what has been going on, because I know I have not been completely closed off about what's been going on. I have been sharing bits and pieces, but I haven't actually been sharing the full picture. And I hope by sharing this full picture, you get more of an understanding, but also an encouragement that things can turn around, things can go well as well. You can recover from things to an extent, while also the possibility of it coming back, but also just take everything as it comes and do the best you can. I definitely know that I would not be here today if it wasn't for God and if it wasn't for my medical team. But I definitely see my medical team as a provision from God. I am so grateful, and thank you guys for sticking around when I have not been posting the things that I know that a lot of people usually watched on my channel before. But that being said, short form videos, I'll be sharing all the stuff about my music and new songs and the journey of I guess pursuing a music career even when struggling with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and all the complexities that come along with that. So if you're interested in all of that, please consider subscribing or sticking along if you already have and watching my short form content, which will be lots of fun and uplifting content about my life as pursuing music and being an artist while also battling Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. All right, love you guys. Bye.